I would just say this in regards to, what Joe Douglas is trying to do here. This is Jamal Adams. Now comes Le'Veon Bell. These guys are passive-aggressive, bitching their ways out of here. And quite frankly, they neither one of the players were here because of Joe Douglas. And you can't have, no matter what you think of Adam Gase, no matter what you think of the job he's doing, and it's not a great job that he's doing, it's hard enough to try to get a team on the same page. But when you have what you supposedly have, one of your stars taking like liberties social media-wise, and I believe violating the social media policy of the New York Jets, because I do believe that there are 32 teams out there that have a policy that go over that policy with their players, and they tell them that this is the way that social media should be used. And one of the ways that it shouldn't be used is when you're taking shots at your team or saying that you want out of there. And so this has become the norm in professional sports, which is really, really tough to take. All I can tell you is that I fully expected it to happen. It's just a matter of how it was going to happen. Nobody was taking on that contract. And there may be somebody that will look to pick him up and, get him on the cheap because they won't have to pay him, and maybe he'll go and he'll be motivated to go play there. I don't know. I mean, it seems like, you really find out a lot about the people when you're losing. And you know who you want on your ship as it's going down, because the rats are going to jump off the ship when they get the chance. And this is one of those players that created nothing but aggravation and problems for a coach who didn't want him in the first place. So all I can tell you, again, it just goes back to the original way all of this went down with Adam Gase and Mike Maccagnan and Christopher Johnson. And this is what happens. And it's not surprising in any way, shape, or form. So we can say the same old Jets, that's fine. But this is a new regime dealing with players that they didn't want to deal with in the first place.
Yeah, it really wasn't something that made sense at the time, and it's bearing exactly out that way. And the worst part about this was that Mike Maccagnan was trying to save his job at the time because he had to hit home runs in that free agency period and also that draft, or he was going to be done. That's the way it was framed, that he had all this money to spend, and this was the most important free agency period and offseason the Jets had had in a long time because they had used the previous couple of years to rebuild and get under the cap and all of that stuff. And then this is what happened. He went out and he signed Tremaine Johnson, who was here for like 6 minutes, pulled a couple hamstrings, and then disappeared. He signed Le'Veon Bell, who, of course, we know the story of him, who just really, you could not have screwed up more than Le'Veon Bell did. If he thinks that he is some sort of martyr for the rest of the running backs out there getting contracts, he is dead wrong because he screwed the whole thing up. There was a couple of times that the Steelers offered to make him the highest running back in football, highest paid running back in football. He declined that because he wanted more money, sat out a year, got a way worse contract from the Jets, and now he was here for a year and a half and got cut. So that whole thing blew up in his face, and most of his career now, the last 3 years of his career have been totally wasted. We'll see if he does anything with the rest of this season. So that wasn't smart. But, yeah, this is how you get in this situation, is when you keep a general manager that feels like he needs to make a splash, you hire a head coach who hates players, apparently, especially running backs, and then you have this combustible situation, and it doesn't last.
It's not that he hates players. It's that he does not work well with players, who act like Le'Veon Bell was acting. Come on. I don't know what to tell you. Adam Gase didn't want him in the first place. And, Le'Veon put himself in his own situation. And he was the one that was doing, again, it's kind of like, Jamal Adams. Jamal Adams was doing the same thing. These guys wanted out of here. Now, they may have wanted out of here because of Adam Gase. Now, that's a whole other discussion. But the fact of the matter is they went public with their disdain for the Jets and the organization and the team and everything else. And quite frankly, you're not going to see any tweets from his teammates wishing him well. I can guarantee you that. Just like you didn't see any teammates wishing Jamal Adams well. So these guys were not popular in the locker room, and these guys created more of a distraction and more of a problem. They love to talk about themselves and how great they once were, or maybe one day will be in the case of Jamal Adams. But, for the Jets, it's basically addition by subtraction right now. You have to get rid of players that are pulling your team in the wrong way. And the thing for the coach is the influence on the locker room. And this is why when Bill Parcells would take over a team, he would always bring in 4 or 5 of his quote-unquote guys. And those guys would come in there and they would run the locker room. And Bill would have a way of saying, I'll keep you around for an extra couple of years. I'll pay you an extra $2 million. You want to go work on a garbage truck? You want to go do this? You want to go do that? You want to be my guy in the locker room? That's the way, that was kind of the understanding that he would have with some of his other players. And I think that's one of the reasons why Adam Gase wanted to bring Frank Gore in here.
Yeah, but I was going to say, the problem is, those Adam Gase guys, one was Kalen Ballage, who didn't know what to do on a football field and had to get released, and the other was Frank Gore, that is closer to Canton than a 10-yard gain. So I don't know if he is someone who's bringing in the wrong type of guys, doesn't appeal to enough players that want to play for him so he can bring in that leadership council wherever he goes. But this whole thing is just, it's going to be a limp to the finish line. And I don't believe that this team will be inspired. I don't think they're going to play all that well. I was trying to think about, what could happen positively from now until the end of the season for the Jets that would screw up this scenario that Jet fans are now drooling over, which is no Adam Gase and then Trevor Lawrence being the first overall pick. And it's really hard to imagine a scenario where they play well and win 4 or 5 games the rest of the way. I guess it all comes down to, the defense, I can't give you a reason at all. But the offense, I guess it'll come down to Sam and the wide receivers being healthy. That's really it. That's the only thing I can say projecting forward that maybe makes this team win a game or two. And I'm not confident that stuff's going to happen, even if they are healthy and Sam plays well, they're not going to be able to win games.
Well, I think Mekhi Becton would help if he can get back. Denzel Mims, I'd like to see him on the field. That's going to be one of the big things moving forward for whoever the next coach is for the Jets coming next year, is seeing the development of that young player who we haven't seen. We've seen a number of rookie wide receivers all over the league already have an impact. And it's too bad that, of course, Sam gets hurt and this kid gets hurt and doesn't even have a chance to get on the field together. It's unbelievable, the amount of injuries and issues that this team has had to deal with, since they all came back from the pandemic and all that other stuff. Again, for me, it wasn't, it's not all that surprising that this happened, and quite frankly, I would have done it earlier. I would have done it before the season even started. It's all the crap that went on last year with Le'Veon Bell. Again, it's easy. It's all about production and tolerance. If you are producing and the team is winning, and you're maybe doing some stupid things on social media, that's one thing. But if the team is losing, and you got to deal with this on top of the losing and all the other crap that's going on, it's just better to just cut bait and get out of here. Just get them out of here and, bite the bullet and, eat the salary and move on. And I don't necessarily know that it was probably all that difficult to convince Christopher Johnson to do this.
No.
Because really when you look back at the awkwardness of the hirings and the way that it all went down, Christopher Johnson deserves criticism or credit, depending on how you look at it, for all of what Adam Gase and Joe Douglas are dealing with right now.
Yeah, and I know that Jamal Adams had to go. I know that Le'Veon Bell had to go. I understand that these things had to happen, but I do hate to see players act like babies and then get what they want.
Yeah,
I don't like that. I'm tired of that.
Yes.
In all sports, it's unbelievable. It's like, okay, I'm going to act like an a-hole, and then you're going to give me what I want. And that shouldn't happen that way all the time. Now, I can't blame the Jets. With that being said, I also can't blame the Jets for doing what they are doing at this stage of the organization, which is another rebuild. That's what it is. It's a new general manager. It's another rebuild. You are accumulating picks. You are accumulating cap space. That's fine. But if the Jets are in a situation down the road where Joe Douglas is still here and they're building something and there is a guy who's unhappy for one reason or another, you can't just look at his Twitter account and then cut him the next day. You're going to have to find a different way to figure it out when you get to a different stage of your rebuild. Because right now it works. Down the road, I don't know if it works so much.
Well, this is where all the investigation goes on. This is where you have to know who these people are. If you're going to write somebody a $25 million check, you better make sure you're giving it to the right guy that actually cares, that wants to show up, that wants to be great. This is why we always talk about these young quarterbacks that are coming out of college. You have to really go in depth to find out about their personality, and you got to find out whether or not they are all-in type of guys. I don't necessarily know that Baker Mayfield was an all-in type of guy when he was first drafted by the Cleveland Browns. But I think Kevin Stefanski has been working very hard to make sure that he is focused and he's playing well because he's in the right system. They got good players around him, and they have a steady head coach at the helm that is calming everything down. Sam really hasn't had that. Sam hasn't had that kind of restructure. And even with Josh Allen struggling last night in interceptions and drop balls and all that other stuff, he's in a much more structured situation and a much better situation for him to be successful. Sam, how do we know? I mean, it's still hard to tell whether or not he is the long-term answer here. But I do know this. When it comes to the business side of it, if they are the team that is holding the number 1 overall pick in the draft, it's going to be a new coach and it's going to be a new quarterback, and that's what they're going to be selling to their fan base from the business side of things.
Yeah, and if you're Sam Darnold, you're thinking, all right, my story is going to end one of two ways. Like, I'm going to come back from this shoulder sprain, and I'm going to be great, and I'm going to throw a bunch of touchdown passes, and my receivers are going to be back, and maybe we won't win a lot of games, but I'm going to show the Jets that I am the future at this position. Or it's going to continue to spiral downward, and he's going to have to go somewhere else to resurrect his career. That's it.
Or he plays well. They still lose. They still end up with the number 1 overall pick, and now he has value.
Yeah.
And that's really what the Jets have got to hope for. Personally right now, the way this thing feels and looks, it looks a lot like the Jacksonville Jaguars the past 2 seasons. They started getting rid of players. They started, moving players out of there. And then when you look at the Jaguar roster, you're saying, man, they're getting rid of all these named players and everything. But they've been drafting to replace all these players. And they're trying to draft the right guys. And unfortunately for them, they've had to deal with some injuries. But they do have some top-end young talent that's going to be good. It's just going to take a while for it to get good. And I feel like the Jets are, trying to do the same thing.
Yeah, but where's that top-end talent right now
that's
young?
Mekhi Becton has to be one of those.
Sure, okay.
All right, so Denzel Mims, we haven't seen him. He has to be one of those. I mean, all these wide receivers that almost all the wide receivers that came out in the top 2 rounds of the draft have had significant impact.
Is Quinnen Williams one of those guys?
Quinnen Williams is one of those guys.
Can he be one of those guys?
Yes, absolutely. They all have to be.
I know they have to be, but is he? I mean, we've seen a decent amount of him.
It's not going to happen overnight. That's all I can tell you. And right now, when you're 0-5 and you're getting beat by double digits, and you have a morale problem, you have an energy problem, you have obviously a depth of talent problem. There's 5 or 6 different things that are going on, and unfortunately, Adam Gase's personality doesn't help him publicly either.
Now, I know this is the obvious statement of obvious statements, and it's the usual analysis. But, the Jets cannot bomb a head coach hire here again. It's enough of these. I don't know. It's so hard because on one hand, you want to say, go and get the bright young mind who hasn't done it before, the cutting-edge guy, whatever. And on the other hand, it's like you want to go and get somebody with experience, but the last guy you got with experience is this knuckle.
All right, so let me ask you.
So it's like you cannot, more than anything, do not bomb this hire, for Christ's sakes.
Well, there are a couple of young coaches out there. Sean McVay comes to mind, right?
Yep.
Brought a lot of energy to the Rams and got them all the way to the Super Bowl, and now is re-energized that team, and that team is one of the better teams in the NFC, and they're going to be a bitch to play against because their defense is going to be tough, and they got some high-end and top-end talent, and all of a sudden Jared Goff is playing well. I would say another one of those young coaches who I don't really know the answer on him yet because of the lack of talent on that team, especially defensively. That would be the Cincinnati Bengals and Zach Taylor, who came off of that McKay coaching staff. So, he and Joe Burrow seem to be doing well together, even though they're losing. But that's the kind of thing, Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona, drafting, Kyler Murray and putting him in that air raid offense and all that other stuff. They're having success together. So there are young coaches that are in the league right now that if you are going to go with the number 1 overall pick being Trevor Lawrence, you got to find the offensive guy that's going to unlock his potential to play on the NFL. That's why, Christopher Johnson went and got Adam Gase. There was a thought that, the offensive potential was going to be there. And then last night you watch Ryan Tannehill and you say, if Ryan Tannehill played like that in Miami and was healthy in Miami, maybe Adam Gase would still be the coach down there.
Yeah, I mean, Derrick Henry and what he can do to people in the last couple of seasons of him makes it a lot easier for Ryan Tannehill, and that offensive line has been great. So, I mean, Ryan Tannehill's played really, really well, don't get me wrong, but, they've got some things going for them on that team that are putting him in a great situation to succeed. Yeah, I mean, if it's Joe Brady, who's 31, who just turned 31 years old, and Trevor Lawrence, I mean, that's exciting. That's very exciting to think about the success that Joe Brady has had in his last couple of stops and what he's doing right now in the NFL.
Well, there's your young offensive guy out of the box, and I don't know Joe Brady personally. I don't know anything about the way he, I've seen a couple interviews, and I've looked at a few YouTube interviews and watched some of his tape from LSU. They were running a pro-style offense there. One of the reasons why Joe Burrow was ready to come in and play here. Trevor Lawrence, I don't know how sophisticated the Clemson offense is, but I do know he's an athlete, and he's 6'6", 230 pounds, and he rivals what Josh Allen looks like. I don't think he plays like Josh Allen, but he can run. There's no question about that. And I think he looks more like Justin Herbert to me than he does Josh Allen.
So one thing that I'd be concerned about is that the Jets' top choice would not want to be the Jets' head coach, because as more openings pop up, and we already have 2, and we're heading into week 6, and you've got 2 openings already. 2 coaches have been fired at week 5 or before.
Yeah, but the thing about it is, if you're a coach going to these other places, you are inheriting veteran quarterbacks that are going to want to do things a certain way and can be a little bit resistant to change.
Well, so far, I mean, there could be more openings.
I know that, but coming to if you do come to the Jets and they do decide to go down that road, and they do have the number 1 overall pick, and everybody knows it's going to be Trevor Lawrence, that's a pretty I would want to start my coaching career with that kid. That to me would be a great thing to look forward to as a head coach for the Jets if that were the case.
Yeah, well, that's where it's trending right now. We got the rest of the season to see if that's where it goes. But the only thing to root for now with the Jets, I think, from their fan base is to go 0-16. I think that would be an accomplishment. It would guarantee that you'd get the number 1 overall pick, because I don't think there'll be another 0-16 team. It'll guarantee that the coach would be gone. That's what the Jet fan base is rooting for now, is a winless season as we sit here in the middle of October.
Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the red bell so you're notified when we have new content.